You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken Tech for your ears.
I am looking at my browser right at this exact second, and I reckon I have got about 87 tabs open across 3 different windows.
Oh, yeah.
It is absolute chaos. It genuinely feels like I am trying to read the entire internet at once, and honestly, the computer fan is starting to sound like a jet engine getting ready for takeoff.
It is a very, very familiar feeling. You sit down to explore one simple concept, and suddenly, you have a dozen different rabbit holes competing for your attention.
Exactly.
You start reading about consumer psychology, and then 20 minutes later, you are staring at a highly technical breakdown of search engine algorithms.
Yeah.
It is completely overwhelming when you look at the sheer volume of information out there.
It really is, which is exactly why we are here. Our mission for this session is to unpack a massive stack of founder and marketing strategies, and we are going to pull out the absolute best nuggets of knowledge so you, the listener, do not have to do the heavy lifting yourself.
Fair.
I am your host, and my brilliant co-host and I are here to guide you through these concepts on Vocal Technologist. We are basically going to make sense of all this data and figure out how you can actually apply it to whatever project you are building.
That is the ultimate goal, is it not? Knowledge is only truly valuable when it is understood and actually put into practice.
Spot on.
We have some genuinely fascinating behavioral shifts and technical strategies to look at, and I am really keen to connect the dots on what it all means for the way we build brands and communities.
Let us get straight into it then. The first major theme we need to explore is this massive shift in trust. We have some fresh data from the Edelman Trust Barometer, and it paints a pretty stark picture.
It really does.
Yeah, so 70% of people are hesitant to trust those who differ from them, and even more startling, only 32% believe the next generation will be better off. That is it is a very heavy statistic.
It is heavy.
But it has massive implications for how companies actually communicate with people.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Because if people are losing faith in broad, overarching institutions or even large, generic public figures, we have to ask where that trust actually goes.
Right.
And the data shows that influence is flowing inward. Audiences now heavily favor smaller creators who share their exact values over those massive accounts that try to appeal to absolutely everyone. It completely shifts the dynamic from seeking massive reach and scale to building deep, tightly aligned communities.
And we are seeing smart retail brands adapt to this straight away. They're moving away from those massive one-off influencer deals.
The ones where you pay a fortune for a single post.
Exactly, where you pay a celebrity a fortune for just one post. Instead, they're leaning heavily into gamified micro-creator programs. You look at brands like Urban Outfitters and Sephora.
Yes.
They are giving much smaller creators commissions, special access, and exclusive perks. It is about building genuine long-term loyalty rather than just buying a temporary spike in attention.
Spot on. It is a highly effective strategy because it allows the brand to guide the content and shape the engagement over time.
Yeah.
While the creator feels like a true partner rather than just a walking billboard. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this inward shift in trust perfectly explains the rising importance of building lore versus just telling a brand story.
Oh, I find this distinction absolutely critical. I get so excited about this. A lot of marketers talk about brand storytelling, but building lore takes it to a completely different level.
It is a totally different concept.
Right, because a story has a set narrative arc. It has beginning, a middle, and an end. But lore is about world building. It transforms a passive buyer into an active participant.
Precisely. A story grabs attention, but lore creates a layered universe. It involves consistent visual languages, running jokes, recurring mechanics, and all these hidden details that make audiences feel like they belong to an exclusive club.
Yes, the inside jokes.
Exactly. The key difference is that lore is discovered over time. It is never spoon-fed to the audience in a single 30-second advert.
And that discovery process is where the magic happens. When you discover the mechanics of a brand yourself, or you finally figure out an inside joke, you feel a sense of ownership.
You do.
You are piecing together a puzzle. It builds a completely different level of identity and loyalty. So instead of evaluating a single post on social media by how many likes it gets, brands really need to ask if that post adds a new, interesting layer to their larger world.
That is the exact right metric to focus on.
Yeah.
But, and this is the big catch, to participate in that world, people have to actually find it first. And the mechanics of discovery are being completely rewritten by artificial intelligence.
Speaking of which, if you want people to discover your lore, you have to get AI to find you first. which brings us to the AEO blueprint.
Yes, AI engine optimization.
Exactly, AEO. The way people search is fundamentally changing, and there is a statistic here that really highlights this shift. ChatGPT queries have a median length of 11 words, whereas traditional Google searches are just 3.4 words.
That is a huge gap.
It is massive. People are no longer typing disjointed keywords. They are speaking to machines in full, natural language sentences.
Which completely upends traditional keyword targeting. Startups and established brands alike need to mine these long-form natural language questions. You have to anticipate the specific, highly detailed problems your audience is trying to solve.
Right.
Furthermore, the research shows that 44% of AI citations come from the very first 30% of a web page.
That is a massive operational shift. It means you absolutely have to front-load your answers. You cannot bury the solution at the bottom of a massive 2,000-word article just to keep people scrolling past advertisements.
No, you really cannot.
If the AI agent does not find the direct answer immediately, it simply moves on to a competitor site.
Exactly. You must provide clear, structured, authoritative content right at the top. And this philosophy of structuring data perfectly transitions into what is happening with the Google Universal Commerce Protocol.
Which is quietly changing the entire backbone of e-commerce.
It really is. Because if AI agents are the ones doing the discovering, comparing, and even completing purchases for users, you are not really optimizing for a human reading a catchy title anymore.
Right, you are optimizing for a machine reading your underlying data.
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
Product feeds and structured data determine visibility now. Brands are no longer just competing to rank on a visual search page, they are competing in the recommendation layer. If your product specifications, pricing, and availability are not formatted in perfectly clear, machine-readable data, the AI simply will not recommend your product to the user.
You are essentially marketing to the machine before you even get the chance to reach the human.
Precisely.
And speaking of rethinking how we interact with these AI interfaces, I want to unpack a brilliant example from a startup called QuarterZip. They bypass the usual text prompt setup entirely.
This is a great case study.
It is brilliant. Instead of making you type out what you want, they built an AI that watches a user's screen and guides them in real time using a picture-in-picture display.
It is an incredibly clever approach to user onboarding and support.
The genius there is not just the technology itself, it is the friction reduction. In enterprise software, sales cycles are notoriously long because you have to get IT approvals, run security checks, and install heavy software packages.
Which takes months.
Exactly. But by running alongside whatever you are doing in a picture-in-picture window, QuarterZip bypasses all of that. Plus, because their branding is visible in the window while they help you, every single onboarding session turns into free distribution. It is a self-sustaining growth loop.
It is a perfect example of integrating your product so seamlessly into the user workflow that the friction literally drops to zero. And we're seeing that same principle of using AI to remove friction on the back end of marketing as well. Clever marketing teams are turning Claude Code into a complete SEO command center.
This is where it gets highly technical but incredibly practical.
Yes.
For anyone wondering how this works, they are writing small Python scripts to fetch raw data from their analytics tools and dropping it into JSON files.
And dropping data into a JSON file makes it incredibly lightweight for an AI to parse compared to a clunky spreadsheet.
Right.
Claude then reads those files and allows the user to run natural language queries against massive, complex datasets.
And the results from doing this speak for themselves. In one specific case, this exact system found over 2,700 search terms that generated ad impressions but absolutely zero clicks.
That is staggering.
2,700 zero-click terms. That is an incredible amount of wasted ad spend just sitting there, completely hidden in the data because no human has the time to manually sift through thousands of spreadsheet rows to find those negative keywords.
Exactly. The AI found those inefficiencies in seconds, saving hours and hours of manual analysis. It speeds up the diagnostic phase tremendously. But it is worth noting that you still need human marketing expertise to look at that data and make the final strategic decisions about how to reallocate that budget.
It is about using the tool to do the heavy lifting so you can focus on the strategy.
Precisely.
And strategy is something we really need to look at when it comes to social platforms. That reminds me of how the platforms themselves are completely shifting beneath our feet. We are witnessing the TV-ification of social media.
This is a profound shift in user behavior. Social platforms are no longer just competing with each other for casual scrolling time. They're competing directly with traditional streaming services.
Yeah.
People are literally settling in on their couches, casting TikTok or YouTube to their massive television screens and watching for hours at a time.
Which means if you are a brand trying to break through, a single isolated viral video is not going to cut it anymore. You need to create episodic shows, you need to build a universe, develop recurring characters, and give people a reason to tune in next time.
Exactly.
It goes right back to what we discussed earlier about building lore. You are trying to create loyalty and anticipation, not just a fleeting moment of amusement.
And people desperately want those low-friction, engaging community experiences. We are seeing platforms that understand this desire really winning out. Take an app like Partiful, for example. They essentially killed Facebook events.
They really did. And the way they achieved it is a masterclass in product-led growth. They embedded growth directly into the utility of their product.
Yes.
Every single invite sent through Partiful created a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, and had built-in distribution. It aligned perfectly with Gen Z preferences for playful, low-friction social experiences. It did not feel like a clunky corporate calendar tool. It felt like an exclusive party invitation.
Which is exactly what works in the modern market. And interestingly enough, this need for personality, humor, and low-friction engagement is spilling over into B2B marketing as well, which is historically known for being incredibly dry in corporate.
Oh, absolutely. The days of the faceless corporate logo posting a boring PDF white paper are over. There is a hilarious and surprisingly effective tactic emerging in the B2B space right now, and it is called getting yourself a hype monkey.
It is a brilliant concept. A hype monkey essentially involves assigning a dedicated, highly social personality within your organization to post humorous, relatable, and sometimes slightly unhinged content from their personal LinkedIn account.
So instead of the company page broadcasting corporate speak, you have a real human being posting something that actually makes people laugh or nod in agreement.
Precisely. By connecting with potential buyers on a human level and having internal teams actively engage with those posts, it triggers the algorithm to repeatedly surface this content in prospect feeds. It builds immense familiarity and positive sentiment long before a formal sales conversation ever begins.
And getting that engagement is massive because there is a data point about LinkedIn that absolutely blew my mind. LinkedIn comments are now 15 times more valuable than likes.
15 times.
15 times. The algorithm heavily rewards actual conversation and debate over passive scrolling. It proves that engagement needs to be genuine.
It reinforces the oldest rule in sales. People want to buy from people, even in highly complex business transactions. If you can humanize your brand, you have a massive advantage.
And if you're trying to reach those business buyers, we have a surprising new B2B destination to talk about, Snapchat.
Snapchat. I imagine most listeners still associate that entirely with teenagers sending disappearing photos.
It is funny how much of this comes down to ignoring our initial assumptions. We assume Snapchat is just for kids, but the data tells a completely different story. Snapchat users are twice as likely to run a side business compared to non-users.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, many of them are executives, founders, or professionals who hold serious influence over company spending.
It makes sense when you think about it, though. Executives are humans, too. They use these platforms to talk to their families, or just for a bit of escapism at the end of the day.
Exactly. And about 60% of their users actually believe the platform could play a larger role in helping businesses grow. It is a completely untapped market for B2B brands willing to experiment with vertical video and reach decision makers where they're actually relaxed and paying attention, rather than just hammering their corporate inbox.
That is a phenomenal insight. It highlights how critical it is to constantly question our assumptions about where our audience spends their time, and more importantly, the psychological state they're in when they are there.
Speaking of surprising behavior and psychological states, let us look at some fascinating consumer psychology. The internal values that drive our purchasing decisions are changing dramatically.
They are indeed. One of the most massive shifts we are tracking is that health and wellness are effectively becoming the new luxury. The wellness market is accelerating rapidly, heading for an astonishing $10 trillion by the end of the decade.
$10 trillion is a staggering amount of capital. Where is all that money actually going? Because it is clearly not just gym memberships and vitamins anymore.
Not at all. It is being driven heavily by massive sectors like wellness real estate, traditional and complementary medicine, and a huge boom in thermal and mineral springs. Consumers are intertwining their personal identity and their discretionary spending heavily into prevention and well-being. Being visibly healthy and prioritizing longevity is a core driver of status.
It shows how deeply our internal values drive our buying habits. And there is a fascinating piece of academic research called Cashing In on Cute that illustrates this perfectly. Now, before we unpack this, I want to be incredibly clear to everyone listening. We are strictly looking at this purely from a data and behavioral science perspective.
Yes, exactly.
We are just sharing the findings of the research here and not taking any political sides whatsoever. We are completely impartial on this.
Purely looking at the data.
Right. So looking at it through that objective lens, the researchers found a distinct correlation between political conservatism and the preference for childlike, cute product features. Think about products designed with rounded faces, large eyes, or soft, approachable aesthetics.
The research is truly fascinating from a psychological standpoint. The researchers suggest this correlation exists because individuals with conservative ideologies tend to strongly associate the cute aesthetic with innocence and bodily purity. These concepts align very closely with core moral values often found in conservative thought.
Right.
And what is most interesting is that this effect was observed consistently across different countries and completely different product categories.
It really highlights how visual design is secretly doing heavy psychological lifting. It is not just about making a logo look nice. It is about understanding how shapes and aesthetics subconsciously align with deeply held moral beliefs. It is a perfect example of why understanding the psychology of your audience is the most powerful tool a founder can have.
Absolutely. Marketing at its core is fundamentally applied psychology. If you do not understand the underlying human drivers, all the tactical execution in the world will fall flat.
Since we are looking at the hard data of what works and what does not, I want to spend our last few minutes busting a few persistent marketing myths. There is a lot of conventional wisdom out there that is just flat out wrong.
I am always keen to dismantle a few misconceptions. Let us look at the data.
First up, images in PR pitches. The conventional wisdom is that you absolutely need a flashy, high-resolution image attached to your email to get a journalist's attention, but the data shows only 18.8% of successful pitches actually include inline images. And including them only raises open rates by a microscopic 1.25%.
That is a completely negligible difference, and it actually introduces new risks.
Exactly. Heavy images increase your spam score and hurt overall deliverability. The data recommendation is clear: keep images exclusively for specific product PR where the visual is the actual story, or for complex data visualization. Otherwise, strip them out. Journalists care about the hook and the story, not the window dressing.
That makes perfect sense. Simplicity often wins. Here is another myth we need to bust: generic Mother's Day opt-out emails.
Oh, I see these everywhere. Every single brand sends an email asking if you want to opt out of Mother's Day or Father's Day communications because it might be a sensitive time.
We all receive them. Initially, years ago, it was a very thoughtful, empathetic gesture to allow people to opt out. But now every single brand does it.
Yeah.
They absolutely flood user inboxes with identical, solemn messages, which completely backfires by causing the exact emotional fatigue they were meant to prevent.
So what is the better approach then? Because brands obviously still want to be respectful.
Brands should use purchase history, browsing data, and intent signals to automatically and quietly exclude sensitive audiences. Instead of putting the burden on the consumer to click an opt-out link and manage their own triggers, use the data you already have to be quietly empathetic behind the scenes.
That is infinitely smarter.
Yeah.
Okay, final myth-busting data drop. And this one is huge for anyone creating content. We have hard data on YouTube virality after an analysis of 62 billion views. Let that number sink in. 62 billion views analyzed.
That is about as definitive a data set as you can possibly get. What did the analysis reveal?
First, it turns out that titles with negative sentiment get 20% more views than neutral or positive ones.
Human nature at play. We are biologically wired to look out for threats, drama, or mistakes to avoid.
Exactly. But here is where it gets highly tactical. Length matters tremendously. Titles that sit around 30 characters get 60% more views than titles stretched out over 70 characters. You have to keep it incredibly punchy. And curiously, using numbers or text in your video thumbnails actually reduces views.
That is completely counterintuitive. Almost every single YouTube guru tells you to plaster big, bold text and numbers all over your thumbnails to drive clicks.
I know, but the data shows thumbnails with text average 19% fewer views. It proves that raw human emotion, expressive faces, and clean, uncluttered visual intrigue drive curiosity far better than screaming text. Do not tell them what the video is about in the thumbnail. Make them feel something so they have to click to find out.
If we pull all these disparate threads together, a very clear unifying theme emerges. Whether you are building layered brand lore instead of just telling a linear story, Whether you are front-loading your answers and formatting JSON files so AI engines can easily read your data, or whether you are completely rethinking your B2B social strategy to create entertaining episodic shows, success ultimately comes down to understanding the deeper psychology of your audience. You have to understand how they search, how they form trust in a low-trust world, and how they actually want to engage with you.
So, what does this all mean for you? I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. Take a step back and look at your own business or even your own career and ponder what your personal or professional lore actually looks like. Are you just out there constantly telling people what you do, broadcasting your features and benefits, or are you actively building and inviting them into a layered, fascinating world that they desperately want to be a part of? It is the difference between shouting into the void and building a community that will advocate for you. Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration. If you enjoyed unpacking these strategies with us, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the next conversation. Catch you next time.
Spoken Tech for your ears.